We done? We're done, right? Are we done? Oh, prize? What prizes? Oh, okay. I was just making sure you guys are paying attention there. See, you could have just left and there was no prizes. Good. Only one person, maybe I should just give it to you and then the rest can just go. But at this time, I'm going to introduce Raymond Mesa, and we got Robert to close us out.
All right, just want to thank everybody for being here, and just want to give all glory and honor to Yeshua, Jesus Christ. I'm joined today here with my wife and my son, and this is my third year coming, and just like I said, it's an honor. I guess we'll start. My name is Raymond Mesa. I'm originally from Northern California, from Merced County, the city of Las Vegas. Half Mexican, half native. I'm a Hopi Paiute. I'm a proud enrolled member of the Colorado River Indian tribe at Parker, Arizona. I was born on the west side of Las Vegas, and that's the projects, the low income housing, roach infested. It's where all like the field workers and everybody would go when all the other families were trying to get on their feet. That's the area that they would go to because it was the cheapest. So we watched families come and go. The school I went to, it's where considered where all the poor kids went. And I remember all my friends growing up, because I was half native, they never seized the chance to, or they never let a chance pass by to make fun of me. Just around Thanksgiving time, when the subject of the pilgrims and the Indians come up, then they would do the whole woo, ask me dumb questions like, you live in a teepee, you eat buffalo, and I'm like, come on, man, I come from the same project as you. But I remember all my friends, we would all show up to each other's birthday parties for those of us that were, fortunate to have one. And that wasn't even nothing big either. It's just like a little meal with a cake and stuff. But it was pretty big back then. But I'm the only boy. I got three sisters. I got two older sisters and one younger sister. My mom, full-blooded Indian. My dad, full-blooded Mexican from Michoacan. And mom's, she was single mother, and she did everything she could for us. But back then, I'm state raised, like many of us started out, and I'm from Northern California, so I guess around the 80s, it was around the 80s that everything started changing. Gangs, movie colors came out, gangs started coming out, and all of a sudden everybody in the neighborhood and the project, where I live at, it's just nothing but miles and miles of projects, and we have to all walk through that to get to school, to get to the stores. None of us had cars, and I already felt a little bit different because of the whole Indian thing. But when the gang started, I started noticing all my friends wearing red and everything, and I didn't choose to go that route. I choose to go the blue route, and so I started banging Sureño. And so I became automatic enemy in my neighborhood and in the projects. So I would get jumped by the same friends that I used to go to elementary school with, and the same friends that I went to their birthday parties and everything, the same friends that I was in the canals getting crawdads with. All of that, all of a sudden they started jumping me, and every day I had to fight to get home. Every day fighting to get home, and there was just a few of us. I didn't meet other Sureños in the city until I got to junior high. that's the junior high, and the city I come from, that's the Crossroads. And so I would meet a Sureño from this elementary school, the other one from the surrounding town. And so we would be hunted. So I already started off life, I guess you would say, making bad decisions. I mean, if I, you know what I mean, I already felt left out and different, and then I wouldn't made it worse. And so it's just a series of bad decisions. And I got in trouble because we were poor, and the apartments that I lived in, you can hear everything through the wall. You can hear your friend getting beat. You know, the toilet bowls were always plugged, and you know, you look out the backyard because our backyard was just long because it connected to the other apartments. I'd see my classmates back there with the bucket because when one of us would plug the toilet bowls, like all of them would get plugged up. So I look out back and I see my little buddies using the buckets out the back and everything. But it was, I guess, for me being a kid back then, it was all normal. But I started getting into trouble. I was more advanced than my friends. I would always get caught stealing. I went to juvenile hall at like 10 years old. My older sister Cindy, she was beautiful, and the project's full of beautiful girls. And my sister ended up catching the eye of one of the out of towners, some guy from Raleigh named Sir Fox, and he was my idol. This guy would be walking around, blue rag hanging out of his back pocket. And he wasn't afraid to fight anybody, and he would get jumped all the time, so automatically I tried to connect with this guy. And my sister ended up getting pregnant. She stayed back in, ended up moving in with Sir Fox and his family. And after I got out of juvenile hall, I went to juvenile hall at like 10 years old, got out when I was 11. I was getting in too much trouble where the courts were going to take me away and make me either send me to YA, make me ward in court or something. And my mom made a deal that if I went to move to Arizona with my grandma, that they'll drop the charges. So that's what they did. So I guess the deal my mom made with the state of California is that if I just leave California and not come back till I was 18, then I'll be all right. But so we ended up moving to Parker, Arizona, and I knew I was native, but I didn't know that much. I didn't know the heritage or anything. So when we moved to Parker, my grandma and everybody told me to go to the local powwows and all that, and I had no idea what a powwow was. I didn't mean it. Just I felt like an alien. I mean, I've never seen girls wear baggy shorts because where I'm from, they were all cholaed out, mini skirts and all that, and hair up to here. I moved to the reservation and they're wearing Jordan jerseys and all that, and it's just weird. I felt out of place. I mean, I was wearing just plain khakis, white t-shirt, and you know, I stuck out like a sore thumb. And since I'm coming from California, the Arizona kids didn't like me. So when I get to high school, you know, I got a lot of fights. I just felt I didn't fit in. Everybody saying wannabe, calling me a wannabe, and I just felt like I didn't fit in. So when I went to the Indian projects, the housing projects, the Indians there, they're more cool, relaxed. They're, you know, robo frying, drinking King Cobra 4Gs, puffing gas. I mean, they made everything so fun, and I could connect with them. And that's what I did. I'd take off from the house and I'd go kick into the projects with the Indians. And there was no gangs in the projects then back then. Instead, everybody knows the reservations, they don't have family wars, they have family wars. The families are big there, so it kind of made me feel a little bit like I was at home. And so this family would go to war with this family, and to me, in my eyes, that seemed like a gang fight. Okay, this is the gang and this is the gang, so I try to, you know, make it a little normal. But as for my family, me and my sisters are the oldest of the grandkids. So all my cousins were all still in diapers and barely, you know, they're at the oldest maybe 10 years old. So I didn't have, I think I'm the oldest grandson. And so I still felt lost, and I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to fit in, so I started smoking weed, and I don't even like weed. I mean, you can pull that grass up right there, and I'll get high off of it. I have no tolerance for it. It made me sleepy. I mean, when they used to have parties, I could see in the corner of my eye the lighter flicking, and I'm sitting there, there's girls there and everything, and I see the lighter flicking, I try to go there, and they'll be like, hey, get them over here. I'll go over there and hit it, and that'll be it. I'll be looking for someone's backseat to pass out in, and then I wake up the next day and listen to how everybody else had a good time. But I forced myself to smoke weed because everyone else was doing it. And then crystal meth hit the scene, and that was something else. It wasn't even crystal meth then, it was speed. It was that kind of speed where it opened up your pores like chicken skin. Like 3 people could sit around and do a line and be up for like 3 days, chewing lines. I mean, my friend be out there watering the grass for like 3 days. We're all looking like holding on to the same kind of beer for hours. I mean,
same spot, never move.
Yeah. I mean, people would light a cigarette and put it down, the whole thing would burn out. I mean, we were so wired back then. And we thought it was funny. My mom didn't even know what was going on. She was just like, what are you guys doing? And it was crazy. I didn't realize that, that it would lead to what it did lead to. We would have contests, who could stay the longest and all that, and it seemed fun back then. But I didn't know my oldest sister, after she had my nephew, when my oldest sister, when we left to Arizona, a year later she followed behind because I guess immediately after we left, her baby's daddy's family started taking her food stamps and, taking advantage of her, became abusive. And so she ran away from that relationship and brought my nephew to Arizona. And so when she got to Arizona, she went through it. She tried to go to high school, and she was smart. She tried to go to high school and finish, but Lord forbid her wear makeup and have her hair fixed because that made her a prostitute. So she got made fun of in California. And then when we got to Arizona, it was even worse because now that she's native and she's wearing makeup and stuff, the girls just bash on their own, she must be a whore. And then the guys liked her, so there was the endless supply of guys always going to the house, and that made my sister more enemies. And I didn't even notice it happened so fast, but someone introduced her to speed. And she was once a good mom, and then it's like overnight, she just forgot about her kids. And it happened so quick that when people try to point it out to me, I would get mad because that's my older sister. I was proud of her and everything. And so growing up in Parker, I dropped out of school. I ran away from home. I started experimenting with drugs. I just couldn't find myself. I would find a few friends that were from Phoenix that would move to Parker, and they were into the gang culture. And so all 3 of us would get together, and we, instead of me being called a wannabe, all 3 of us are the wannabes. So yeah, I still felt comfortable. But I ended up getting locked up till I was 18. One of my buddies, or it was a group of us, tried to carjack somebody, and nowadays you do a carjacking, it's life. You know what I mean? It's like you're getting a whole book thrown at you. But we carjacked somebody, and I took the rap for it, and the police knew I didn't do it, but I kept saying that because my buddy was already 18. I took the rap for him, so I sat in juvenile hall till I was 18, And then immediately after I turned 18, I didn't have any life skills. I was that guy that would lay in the back room and tell my mom I'm the man in the house. No job, I don't get up and clean, I don't do anything, but I expect all the respect a man should get. I don't even know how my mom put up with it. I mean, I love her to death, but I don't know how she put up with me. And that didn't even last long. Immediately after I turned 18, I went on a beer run in Blythe, California, and we ended up getting pulled over by a La Paz deputy, and this happened in Ehrenberg on the Arizona side on the border, and the deputy wrestled down the driver, and when he wrestled down the driver, I jumped into the driver's seat, and when I jumped into the driver's seat, I started the car up, and I started going. The cop jumped into the window, tried to take the keys out of ignition. I grabbed his hand, and I drove him up the highway. So another bad choice, and all I had then was just a bench warrant for not showing up to court. And you talk about making a bad situation for me. So I let this guy go out of the window, and I felt the car hit something, the back tire, boom. Like, I'm done, I killed this guy. So now I'm on a high-speed chase from Ehrenberg all the way back to Parker, and they got police coming from the reservation up at me, and I got police behind me chasing me. And this is like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I already thought, in my mind, I already thought I killed this cop, so I gunned it straight at the oncoming police. I ended up going on a high-speed chase all the way to the reservation, and DPS set up a roadblock. I ran it, and the car broke into 2 pieces. I didn't have a scratch on me. And since I led a high-speed chase onto the reservation, the tribes took over, but state wanted me for attempted murder on a La Paz deputy. And I didn't even know the car that was behind me, the lead car behind me, was that cop I ran over. When I ran him over, a car pulled up behind me to see if he was all right. And this guy's name is Steve Frakes, Deputy Steve Frakes. And he was going to be sheriff that year. And I ended his career because I ended up ripping all the tendons out of his trigger handle. And he jumped into the car and said to follow him. And when my car wrecked, he's the one that pulled me out. And I was wondering why this cop was cussing at. You know, he pulled me out, cussing me out and everything. But that cop, I mean, he should have been, you know, I was like super cop. I'm gonna let it run him over, but he made sure he got me. And he's probably watching too. I got a hold of him years later, and I told him, I'm sorry, I had no right to do what I did to you. And he accepted my apology, you know, which is awesome. But I ended up, the tribes held me in their jail until the state of Arizona was filing for extradition. Finally, I made my rights. I ended up going to prison for the first time. And in court, they dropped it from attempted murder down to aggravated assault because the car, when it was in motion, was pointed away from him. That's the only thing that saved me. So I got aggravated assault, went to prison right here in Arizona, ended up in Florence, got out, and back then in Florence, I don't know if anybody here remembers, like in 1996, they were having their M wars here. The new M and the old M were going at it. So when I hit Florence, that's what was going on in the yard. There was a whole lot of war. And at that same time, they had the Florence sex scandal. They indicted a bunch of CEOs for prostitution, gambling, and so I got there during that time. So now I'm in Arizona, and I get there. I'm 18, and I get there. Then I find out that the Sureños and the guys from Phoenix or from Arizona ain't getting along. So right off the bat, I have to learn to be aware of my surroundings. This was back in the 90s. And I get out, and I got out October 18th. I went back before Christmas, and when I went back for a series of stabbings, and I ended up back in Yuma. and I ended up in Yuma, and I discharged from Yuma from CDU, and I almost had a hop on here. And I ended up getting charged in-house, but not criminally. So that's the only reason I discharged, because the DA didn't pick up the charges, and I got charged just in-house. I get out, and my mom begs me to go back to California. I'm getting in too much trouble, so I go back to California. I get to California, and I was an adrenaline junkie. And back then, the Norteños, they came out with a CD called GUN, and they had orders from their higher ups to exterminate all Sureños from the streets in Northern California. And I got there just in time for that. And when I got up there, man, it was just all out war. I mean, you couldn't even go to the gas stations, and you didn't know who was who, because they had generations. They had generations and stuff. And for my city, I'm part of the first generation of Sureños there. And so I get there, and it was just every turn. I ended up getting on gang card. I ended up catching, charges right off the bat, Winter County. Eventually, I ended up going to prison, because that's what happens when you're out there banging me. You just straight to prison. I mean, when you're out there just doing what you do, you end up going to prison, and I end up going to prison. So now I got one number at discharge in Arizona, and I'm on my second number in California, and I'm not even 23 yet. And it was just a series of bad choices. Trying to be the biggest and toughest, trying to be loyal. I mean, and the thing about it is, I learned this later. You'll introduce somebody that you know from prison. You can trust this guy. And the reason you can trust this guy is because he's righteous, meaning that he's a professional liar, he's a professional cheat. And then you're in a hurry to introduce this guy to your old lady. And how many people here knows what happens next? This guy ended up taking your old lady. But yet we still live on that. Oh, you can trust this guy's righteous, even though he's a proven professional liar. And me as a youngster, fell for that over and over. I've been married 4 times. 3 times to the same toxic woman. I mean, not the same person, but the same personality. And I can't do it no more. But I tried to do the family man thing. I went on the run. I was on parole. We ended up moving here to Yuma. But before we moved to Yuma, I ended up, when I was in Parker, ended up in a shootout, got shot, and they ended up sending me back to California on a violation for getting shot. I ended up on the top tier, and I got a bullet in my leg, and they put me on the top tier in Chino to do my violation. I'm like, this makes no sense. I ended up going out to Mexico. I get jumped out there. Turns out Mexicans don't like Mexicans, you know what I mean? So I get to Mexico, and I got jumped. I got my teeth smashed out. I was stabbed up. I got hit by a machete. I got scars all over my head, my stomach. I mean, I got defensive wounds across my arms. I mean, they don't play around in Mexico. They were trying to bury me. And my uncle, when they found me in the dirt, surrounded by my own blood, soaked up by the sand. They rushed me to the port of entry, gave them my ID, told them as an American citizen, and they flew me. They said, like, he's gone. I mean, they flew me out anyways, and they ended up saving me. The doctors told my mom, your boy, someone's been praying for him. And when I came out of that, that's the first thing they were saying is, God's got a plan for you, God's got a plan for you, God's got something for you, because you should be dead. And again, I got violated, and I got sent back to Chino again. First time with a bullet in my leg, the second time, so the state don't have no sympathy on you. So I'm sitting up in Chino and end up being sent out to Corcoran, finish up my violation. So I go to Corcoran, and I'm just all stitched up. I got staples all in my head. I go to Corcoran, old Corcoran B yard, level 3 yard, and it just, It's laid back. You get there and it's like, oh man, I can relax because the homies back. You know what I mean? It's like you ain't got nothing, you don't have to worry about nothing but to walk around, missing my teeth with all kinds of staples in my head. I mean, it's just, you know, words can't describe it. And then I get out and like I said, my teeth were missing. And that happened when I was 30, and the low self-esteem, I guess, got me because I ended up becoming codependent on a woman that, which is wicked. She loved drama. She was that kind that would want everyone to see the gangster in you, but not the good person in you. And I felt like I had to stay with her because nobody else was gonna love me, you know. My teeth were gone. I mean, it was just, it was an ugly feeling. But I stuck with her, and I kept going back on violations. Back then, the violations for California was automatic year. You know, you get violated, automatic year, 10 months if you're lucky. And go straight to Chino all the time. I was in Chino in 8809. It was historic because that's when the West Yard burned down. I was there, but I was on East Yard. And we looked out the window, we see the helicopters and everything, and we're like, what the heck is going on? I didn't know that the whole place was on state of emergency and all that. But in 8809, Chino got taken over, the whole prison there got taken over by the inmates, and they burned down 4 buildings. Governor Schwarzenegger back then flew a helicopter to the site and said it looked worse than one of his movie sets and all that. But I was a part of just a bad toxic relationship, marriage, and then we tried movie. I'm hooked on dope. I'm sitting there trying to be a dad. I can't be a husband. I can't be any of that. And I have a wife, back then an ex-wife, that's encouraging me to be violent and to go out there and do things. And we lived right here in Yuma, and we lived over by Avenue C, and her brother lived right here in Okietown, so I'd always be in Okietown getting high. Whenever I wanted to get high, I'd go to Okietown, and I remember running around for days, staying away from home and all that. And Yuma was pretty cool when we first moved here. It's like a dream. And then when you ventured onto that dark side of it, I mean, now that's all I see of Yuma. Not now, but back then, every time I picture Yuma, all I picture is the dark side of it. You know, because Yuma sucks you down, that dark world. And I ended up catching a new number, but not from Yuma. We moved to Needles. And immediately after getting the Needles, I went through most of my life in California. All the charges they would catch me for were all the dumb things. And I skated through the whole 90s era and everything, avoiding the strike. And when I finally discharged my P number and I moved to Needles and I'm off parole, I ended up catching my first strike in Needles. And it's just, I got turned in by the dope man. The dope man threw me in prison for $12 because I was gonna rough him up because he didn't give me what I wanted. He called the police on me, and I ended up going to, I caught a strike. They were going to get me for terrorist threats and home invasion. And I'm like, what? I thought I was seriously going in for trespassing. I should have just stayed home. I mean, it was just a bad decision after bad decision. And I went to prison, got another number, AN number. So now I went from 1 letter to 2 letters. So I'm working on my 3rd number. But luckily for me, my point system started over again. And the last time I was in a dorm living was way back in the beginning, or in the 90s. And for those of you guys who don't know, when you're in prison, when you're low custody, you know, level 1, level 2, maybe, you get to go to dorm living because, you know, you're not in there for that violent crime. level 3, level 4, you go to cell living because, you know, obviously you can't get along with others. Well, I spent so much time doing the cell living and I got sick of it. I got sick of listening to the same story over and over. I mean, it started reminding me of a tomb. Like no matter how much light was in the cell, it just seemed wet, dark, cold, eerie, lonely. I didn't want to be there anymore. So when I got this last number, I couldn't. I mean, before I went, all my other terms, I stayed away from alcohol, I stayed away from drugs, but this last time I couldn't do it. I stayed drunk. As soon as I hit reception, that's all I did. I hit reception, and that's all I did was I was just making Pruno left and right. Pruno was his homemade alcohol. I stayed drunk. I didn't want to be there anymore. And the time I accepted I accepted, I think, 32 months in a strike. So it wasn't that long of a sentence. I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it, so I figured, you know, the quickest way to be 32 months is to stay drunk. So I stayed drunk at reception, I got to mainline, and I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, the marriage I was in, you know, it was toxic. Everything would appear to be all right on the outside. Just sending me money, sending me packages, sending me letters, at home waiting for me to get out and everything, sending me my package for my discharge order. But something right here was missing. And I don't know what got into me, but I decided to end my marriage. I couldn't go home to her. I didn't want to do it anymore because she had no problem with me being in prison. She would brag about her husband in prison rather than brag about the husband who's out here trying to work. And like a dummy, I tried to make her happy. You know what I mean? I'd go back to prison. I'd beat up who she wanted me to beat up. I'd go and do this and that. So I ended that marriage, and I ended my marriage, and I walked away from the gang life. I felt God calling on me. I felt something was going on right here. And I was already getting close to going home, so I walked away from the gang life. I hung it all up. And when I got out, I went back home to Las Vegas. I was supposed to go to San Bernardino, but again, you know, just because I decided to walk with Christ and to hang everything up doesn't mean that I still didn't have all that routine in me. So I went on routine and I ran from the gate. And as soon as I get to Las Vegas, the first thing that comes out of my mouth, because I discharged about $2,000 on my book. So I get there and I'm just trying to find some type of ground, something normal to stand on. First thing out of my mouth to my friend is, "Can you give me a quarter pound?" I didn't even want to do it, but it's just something gangster to say, I guess. Something to make me seem normal in their eyes. So they go out and get it for me. And so now I'm high, and I hated myself. I couldn't do it. I ended up going to church. I went to the church, I got baptized, I gave myself to Christ, and I walked away from everything. And on my way to work, as I started working in the fields, it's like 3 in the morning, I was sitting in the back of the car, I started getting on Facebook, and you know, only people up at that time were tweakers and stuff. Tweakers are sergeants on their night shift. I met my wife back in the 90s when I first came from California to Parker. We dated in high school, but I left her because she was boring. She wanted to play volleyball and read books, and I wanted to drink and do other things. And so I ended up leaving her back. That was back then, so she was my high school sweetheart. But we dated back in high school, so I get on Facebook and she's on there, and she's like, "Hello, Mr. Menza," and find out she's a sergeant in the jail and all that. So, you know, part of changing is you gotta change the people you hang out with, what you do, all that. So I ended up hooking up with my wife Johnny, and she drove all the way up to Las Vegas to get me to bring me back down to Parker. I get to Parker, and I'm still struggling with my faith. I'm still struggling with my faith, and I still thinking I can drink. and I can do the Christian walk, but you can't. And then in 2016, my little sister told me that they found a body floating in the canal. And if there's any reason to get on fire for Christ for me at that time to make a solid choice, it was then. They found a body floating in a canal. And my little sister called me and told me, hey, I heard rumors that they found a body of a girl floating in the canal. They pulled her out, she's zip tied and are duct taped, and they think it's, Cindy, my older sister Cindy. And I asked my little sister, where'd you hear that from? And she said, at NA meeting. So I started laughing at her, what the heck, dude, a bunch of tweakers and stuff know that the cops don't, you know what I mean? And so as I'm working, but just to put my little sister at ease, I told her, after work, I'm gonna go, report my sister missing. And as my shift's coming to an end, people come to the work and they're getting my coworkers and they're saying, hey, do you know where your aunt is at? Because then everybody started checking on their loved one, their sisters, their aunt, their everything. So then I knew it was serious. And so after work, I go and report my sister missing, and I had tattooed the Trust No Man green on her arm, so I gave that to him as an identifying marker. And the next day, the FBI called and said, we need to meet you, where's your mom at? We need to meet you guys. And I'm like, why? And just to get them to say it wasn't my sister, I'm like, telling them more identifying marks, and they weren't even trying to hear it by then. They're just like, we understand this, and I was like, well, we need to talk to your mom. And I was like, all right, I told them where to find my mom. And then it dawned on me that me and my little sister never even praised my mom for that, because we're protecting my mom. We didn't tell her about the rumors we heard. So I rushed over there, and I was already too late. FBI was there. I could hear my mom scream from the house. And just when I walked in the door, they showed me a picture of my sister on a gurney. And for a lot of people, you hear a lot of people talk about it like it's callous. My homeboy died, my homegirl died. I mean, give you a long list of people that passed away. For me, all it took was that one, my sister, that's it. I was mad, but I had given my life to Christ. What do I do? I got on my knees, and I cried out to God. I said, if I be honorable, will you help me? And he answered me. He answered me, and I woke up the next day, and we started making reward posters. We went up and down, and we were posting them everywhere, in every store, everybody that would listen. And the FBI came and said, you can't be doing that you have to tell us everything. They were trying to silence me. The more they told me to be quiet, the more louder I got. They were trying to tell me how to mourn for my sister, and that's my sister. You're not going to tell me what I can and can't do. So I went out there and I got louder. I had my wife took me around, my little sister, and I rallied my nephews up. And they didn't understand what I was doing at the time, neither did I, but I was fasting, I was operating in the Spirit. I started calling all over the place, and people from all over, I would call the band in California, and they would get on the phone. I would call the tribal office over there. They would get on the phone, and I would tell them I need help. My sister was just murdered. And they would listen, and they would put me through to somebody. And that person just happened to be a believer. She got on the phone and said, I was just praying about this. I knew you were going to call. And then I would call to you, same thing. God told me you were going to call. I called at Peach Springs, and they said, we're having a problem, so-and-so got hurt. So I ended up calling everywhere that the Holy Spirit led me to call on. And then when we had our first community march, to march through the streets of Parker to demand justice for my sister, all these agencies came together, and we marched, and later on, the killers were caught. The killers were caught. And they got the max. We could have asked for the death penalty because this is going to get graphic. The way they killed my sister, they tortured her. When we went to go look at the body, my sister, my mom looked at the body and they said, a girl did this because my sister was stabbed 17 times. She was beaten. Somebody shaved her head. They got a black marker and they drew all over her breast. They beat her, they wrapped her they zip tied her, they wrapped her in plastic, and they threw her in a canal. And the reason she died was because they found water in her lungs, so she survived the whole beating, the whole torture. And just knowing that, and trying to, I've been in shootouts, I've been in home invasions. I've been through a lot of that stuff. And then God would have just granted me an hour to go ahead and gave me authority to do it again. Believe me, I would have did it again in a second for my sister. But he didn't grant me authority. I got on my knees and I asked him if I'd be honored, will he help me? And he helped me. Both the killers were caught, they turned on each other. And when people heard what happened to my sister, when I would tell them, they would listen. They would listen, and they wanted justice for her, and I got a lot of support. And after they were sentenced, I could have just went home, and me and my family could have just took our victory and went home. But not even a year later, another family came, and the police were refusing to look for their loved one, and they found her in a shallow grave with her eyes missing, with her hand half chopped off, and they labeled that a OD. So that sealed it for me and the other family. We created a group called Stand Strong Together. We march every December. We march through Parker demanding justice against drugs, against alcohol, against human trafficking. We started raising awareness for murdered and missing Indigenous people. And through it, every year, us marching and us going on Zoom meetings and us speaking at places, the Department of Justice reached out to me, and I didn't even realize it, but in 2019, President Trump signed an executive order called Operation Lady Justice, assigning a task force to investigate murdered or missing Indigenous women. And I got to sit on a panel of consultants for the first handbook. I got to be on Operation Lady Justice. And I never thought that I would be possible. Instead of being a drug dealer, I was more of a drug user. I didn't do nothing good in my life. I was out there robbing people, shootouts. I've got 3 prison numbers. I never wanted to see my parole officer. I don't even know if they exist. I don't know if they're red, green, yellow, or what. I would run from the gate. But I did nothing good with my life. And just from obeying God and for asking Him for help, that's where He took me. And I couldn't be more honored. And I get to stand here and tell you guys of my sister Cindy. And like I said, my sister Cindy, my name, and now the group Stand Strong Together, we're written in history in the Presidential Task Force for Murdered and Missing Indigenous People. And last year I got to go to Las Vegas and to the National Justice Training Center. There was investigators, FBI, BIA members, and lawmakers from Canada and all over the United States. About 300 investigators and everything inside the room. And I got to tell my sister's story and our struggle, the doors slammed in our face, to train law enforcement across the country and in Canada of what's going on. And so I can testify to you that Jesus Christ is real, His promise is real, and that each and every one of you guys, everyone don't think they're good enough to have a story or what they have to say is important. And it's not true. You guys are worth more than what you guys think. And your stories are valuable. Your stories can help the next generation, and that's what this is all about. Yeah. To keep with your recovery, you know, the desires you have to do good. Water goes. Does anybody here know what the definition of a husband is? It's husbandry. The definition of husbandry is gardening. God gave Adam a garden, the flower. You're supposed to nurture it, and you're beautifiers. And God gave me that, and so I'm the beautifier of my wife. And in this movement, he showed me things and told me things, and you start with the basics, and you move forward, unlearn all that stuff that we learned on the streets, and start getting into what God has for you. To walk in humility is to walk and be in God's improvement and not what man wants you to be. With that being said, I just want to say thank you, and just want to thank Myra and Crossroads Mission for having me here. Almost forgot. This is something I taught my son. This is what we do. No more stolen sisters.
No more stolen sisters.
No more stolen brothers.
No more stolen brothers.
What do we want?
Justice.
And when do we want it?
Now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. Wow. It's just amazing what God does when you surrender.
Amen.